Welcome to The Most Mindset, where you'll hear real conversations about mindset, mortgages, and mastery for loan officers and originators who have outgrown being undervalued and underpaid. Here's your host, Michael Most.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining, Kerry. It's Michael Most with the Mindset Podcast. Lucky and grateful to have you as a guest today. So thank you, Kerry, for joining. Really excited to get this time with you today.
Happy to do it. This should be an interesting little time here, Michael.
Right. Looking forward to it. How old were you? Most of us are seasoned in this business for a while. So tell me, what year, when did you get started in the business? How long you doing it?
Right. Well, it's really, I know, Leanne, my wife, she has been doing mortgages for decades. She does not want me to tell you exactly how long, probably. So I've always been adjacent to mortgages. I know so many war stories. I've seen ups and downs in the industry and the market, all sorts of things like that. My background is tech. I've always been tech here in Seattle, in San Diego, where I'm from. That's my background. And I've helped Leanne with lots of tech stuff and spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. But I really started doing it timing-wise. It was as a job. Very lucky, I guess, because it was right before COVID, which was, from what I understand, even talking to people, was the craziest time in our industry because we saw once in any lifetimes low rates and just the refinancing and the purchases and all the weirdness that went along with the pandemic. Got me into it, and here I am. I went to college, and actually my degree's in math. You probably did not know that.
I did not.
Yeah, and then that was kind of, to age myself, the beginning of the computer, internet, all that stuff, and it was a super fun time to be doing that stuff. Working new developments every few weeks. It was great. I kind of still do that, decades of that kind of thing. And then, marrying into mortgages, more or less.
Did you have your own business? Were you working for someone else? What was your day-to-day like before joining?
No, I started off in different things, but for the most of the time I was doing tech sales for Microsoft, basically. I got a job from San Diego where I was working for a different company, got up here in Seattle back in the 90s, and just been doing that ever since, just selling technology to whoever, enterprises, consumers, everything in between.
So you have a pretty strong sales background then. You're very accustomed to talking to clients, customers, obviously now realtors and people of that nature, because you have a pretty strong background with people skills.
Yeah, we have that, and they have a ton of training programs too about how to interact with people, how to record stuff, how to keep it relatable, And I've also, on that note, my daughter worked for Starbucks, and your baristas, when you walk in, they have a playbook that tells them what to do. Remember stuff about your customers so you can talk to them next time you see them, everything like that, which is exactly, it's how you make people feel important, feel special.
Yeah, I'm a big Dale Carnegie guy. I think that's the people skills, regardless of what happens with the efficiencies of AI and how they are obviously affecting our businesses and our line of work for the good. I really do feel that the human connection and interaction is really important. There's a correlation between sales and people. Was there ever a time where you're in mortgage or with a realtor or with a client and you do something and remind you back to the days or the trainings that you took through Microsoft where you're using some of that technique in today's job that you're doing today, and you see a direct correlation besides for the general, people interaction? Is there any one particular thing that you do that crossed over so easily from there to more?
Yeah. It's really one of the super basics. People are generally more comfortable communicating through a particular, is it phone call? Is it text? Is it email? When you're in tech, it's all email, and I'm just an email machine. But then you find people that, oh yeah, I don't check my email very much, but they can text like maniacs. They give you documents through text, everything like that. And then there's people who they really just want to have a conversation. These are complex concepts, and all these procedures are super arcane that they just can take some serious explanation that you can't do in any kind of a text or email. And that's the super basic of how people want to be communicated with.
And naturally, as your personality fits, what is your go-to would be email first in the order, like between email, phone? Because I've had the opportunity to talk to you a lot of times. I happen to think that you're great on the phone. We don't text much, so if I was guessing, man, I would probably
Right.
say phone, email, text. Am I right or wrong?
It's
Order of
email is first, just because you
email is
have,
first.
in a lot of jobs, you'll constantly have 20 unread messages in your focused inbox, and you just have to churn through them, and you don't have 10, 15 minutes to spend with people. And if you're dealing with other people who are in the exact same situation and having to wait around for leaving voicemails and getting callbacks, all that kind of stuff. So no, I'm probably yeah, email first for sure. And phone, it
Got it.
kind of depends on the material. I mean, if I got a question in text, I'll answer it in text, unless I think it's going to take a lot more to explain.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you using ChatGPT, Gemini, any of these AI to help you with email? And are you finding it to be helpful, or are you well experienced in that communication on
You know,
email? Not
I've been
really.
doing it for a long time because Microsoft pushes you to use Copilot, right? That is
Yeah.
their repackaging of ChatGPT. And I do it in email just because it has told me that I tend to be terse and really just to the point, asking the super direct question without, hope you're well, how are things, did you have a good weekend, all that kind of stuff. So I'll hit the button in the Outlook email and it will say, hey, it might be nice if you asked a personal question or put a more friendly greeting in. And so I use it for that for sure. Yeah, I need to figure out how to do it for more of the technical stuff, the rates, fees, all that, because I've tried and it does a spotty job, but I don't know exactly if I'm not prompting it right or what. Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say are you ahead of the game? In other words, how many years have you been using Copilot because of your relationship through Microsoft?
I
For
st-
me, it's been only a few months. Are
I've
you
I've
longer
used
than
it
that?
for a long time. I mean, since it came out a couple year or two ago, just right after ChatGPT, and played around with ChatGPT, but I don't know if I wouldn't call myself necessarily ahead of the game. I'm not one of those people. Some people you talk to, they compare the different ones and they tell them, "Oh, I use this for this and this for that." No, I'm definitely not like that.
Right.
But and I don't necessarily use it as instinctively as some other people. Just think about the kids that grew up with it. People in middle school who their first thing to do when they have a question is to go to ChatGPT when they anything like that.
Right.
So they're the ones that the AI natives who are going to be the ones to watch in 5 years or something, right?
Any story that comes top of mind where you use ChatGPT Copilot and it was a success, where you're like, well, thank God I rewrote that email with it, or I changed my tone, or I did something completely different by recommendation. And wow, I saw a very different result than had I not used it. Anything come to mind?
I think it's more time savings.
Efficiency.
I have a bunch of records of existing customers and rates dropped. I keep track of when rates drop enough for them to think about a refi or something like that, and then
Sure.
getting them letters out and things like that to tell them what's going on. That is something that AI can definitely do faster. I mean, I can do it. It's just copy, replace, forward, copy, replace, and all that kind of stuff. You can do it, but it can do it a lot faster.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I find it that people of our age group, and I don't want to put a label on it, but I would say anyone over 40 for sure, really appreciates the efficiency factors that come with that. And how so many things that we used to be doing in multiple tasks, from anywhere from 1 to 10 tasks, are now becoming a lot more efficient for us.
Yeah, and I just
So
want
that's
to see it more on the lender side to really use it to make them more efficient and make interactions with them easier.
yeah,
That's what I'm waiting for to really
correct.
revolutionize our industry.
Yeah, and with some of the technology, we're sitting here talking on October, 21st, and yesterday we had the first outage known from AWS through Amazon, which was pretty fascinating from two standpoints. And you're Seattle, you live in the mecca of Amazon. I thought that was interesting that the world kept going, but yet the world kind of stopped It was very interesting to live through that because AWS powers a lot. Just in our industry alone,
Right.
most of the operating systems run on AWS. And think about the millions of people that are transacting every day and email to Encompass and things like that. But what was your feeling yesterday when that happened? Like, what was your reaction?
It was very interesting to see the breadth of how many companies are using it. And, I come from like the tech background. I did a lot of selling to IT and enterprise. And I wonder if they're really going to start looking. I think some people already have looking to broaden, not just be on AWS. Go have a backup in the Google Cloud, backup in the Oracle, Microsoft Cloud, something like that, so that they're not as, single point of failure. That goes out, we're dead in the water. I know
Yeah.
that airlines do things like that because they're the ones, yeah, I have seen outages in the reservation systems. Man, everybody suffers.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So, something you mentioned to me earlier, I want to shift gears here for a second. I love that phrase you used. And I know your wife, Leanne, super sweet human being. When you say I'm married into mortgages, I thought that was like a really catchy line. So, give me the story, some of the background, more like details, if you could, on what made you at that point, like what was happening? Was it just all hands on deck and you were like, fine, I'll help you for a week, and then a week turned into a month to a year? Or was there something where you were like, wow, what was your like light bulb aha moment where you're like, wait, I'm in the mortgage business and I like this or I enjoy this?
Oh yeah. So as I said, for a long time before really COVID, I'd been kind of understanding the mortgage just by being around it, just by exposure. So I knew quite a few things, and I'd gotten my MLO license as well, so I could actually do some real work. But then when COVID came along, it was such an interesting time where the harder you worked, the more money you make, which, as a salary person, you don't necessarily have that. And the you were really making people happy. I mean, at the high level, I gotta try to remember that what you're doing is you're getting people into homes. That's a great thing to do to help people with their lives. You're helping them with their finances, reducing their mortgage payment every month. That is a great thing to do for people. And it really came through. If you could do that a lot, people were super happy to just
Yeah.
to, reduce their mortgage payment. A lot of them or get into a new house or all these things. It was so you were basically feeling good about the work and making money hand over fist. So that was, and then, yeah, I don't know if I ever had a moment of, hey, I'm doing it. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of people, they have stories about, oh, COVID, it was so relaxing. I didn't have to go into the office as much. I had more time for myself. It was exactly the opposite. We were just working every waking moment.
I love your story because most people that I interview and or talk to just in the business, most people have been in the business for a while and they've been doing it for 10, many of them over 20 years plus. And the common answer you get to the question I just asked you is, well, I was hanging out somewhere, wherever they were, and they met a guy who was driving a really fancy car. And they're like, yo, what do you do? And the guy's like, oh, I do mortgages. And they're like, you do what? And they're like, yeah, come on into the office. I could show you this. And it's an interesting thing. The reason I bring that up is because it does take someone with a mathematical background, that's for sure, which is great, fantastic, right? And with that, like when you get into it, it's really just a lot of math that we're really doing on a constant basis. It's algebra, sometimes advanced algebra in some sort of ways, right? But it's X plus Y equals Z. You want a home. Here's what you make. Here's what the payment is. And then it's just really moving the math around to help people understand it more than ever. I'll share with you a funny story that when I first started in the business, I was actually in a post-closing department. So I was a young kid, barely 21 years old, working for an IMB, and I was getting ready to go to law school, so just wanted to put it on my resume. And when I got there, I'm dating myself, but this was 1999, and they had me do post-closing, and then I started working in the closing department. In the closing department, they had a typewriter. This is 1999.
Oh,
This is not like
absolutely.
1970. Gave me a typewriter, and then they had a long legal size paper that was the original copy of what we used to call a HUD-1, which is
Yep.
now it's called a closing statement,
Yep.
okay? And this was an accounting tie-out, which means that it had lines, application fee, all your fees were listed, and then the bank fees and stuff. So I'm using this for a couple of weeks, and similar to you, I have somewhat of a love for math. And I'm not some, Excel guru, but I looked at the sheet and I knew Excel enough, and I said, wait, why don't we just turn this into an Excel sheet, which won't make any mistakes? Now, that's not the best part of the story. The best part of the story I always tell over is I became good friends with Danny. Danny ran the entire accounting department for the bank. It was a pretty big operation. We did a lot of business, had a few hundred loan officers. It was a well-established place. And Danny and I both lived in the same neighborhood, and we would travel about an hour on a mutual bus that would go from New York City back out to Rockland County. And I'm standing so I go to Danny and I brought him this spreadsheet, this Excel sheet, and I kept emailing it to him, but he required that I print it out and bring it to him because, email is too much. So I'd print them and bring them to him. And he wasn't so happy at first that we weren't using his typeset. Fast forward maybe a month or two, I'm standing by a bus stop with Danny, and Danny turns to me and he goes, Michael, I got to tell you something. When I first met you, I thought you were a pompous young kid. And when you made me do this Excel sheet or whatever, I was really not happy with you. But I want you to know that since you've given me those Excel spreadsheets, I've reviewed the first 100. Not one of them have a mistake. And it dawned on me, and I was like, Danny, you do know that a calculator uses the same thing Excel uses, is never going to make a mistake. And it was a real eye-opening. The reason I share the story is Danny was much older than me at that time, and that's about 25 years ago. And fast forward to today, that there's always so many things between technology and AI where I was a young guy teaching Danny something 25, and how there's so many ways for us to learn from the younger people in the business today, or the younger minded people, or the people that are evolving within the business. So my question, with that as a background, my question for you is someone that's relatively fresh. You've been around the business for a while, but you're not, you haven't been tormented, right? You came in COVID, right? But now you've been through a little bit of that lull from 22 to 23, so you've seen a little bit of that. What would be your advice to someone new getting into the business, or to someone that's been in the business a long time, that you would be like, here's a fresh way of looking at this?
That's a big question there, Michael. Let's see. Is someone coming into the business? So we have things like that because we do get people talking to us, and somebody in particular I'm thinking of. Find a shop that will train you. Things like this. I mean, jumping in the deep end without somebody to help you is this is a complicated business, and all your work should be checked for quite a while, right? So that's just find a company with a good training program. I'm not exactly sure who those people are, but I think that's the thing for someone getting into it. For someone, of a certain age who wants to keep current, try to keep current. I mean, luckily I'm a tech guy, so I keep current on all the stuff. But then again, I remember when everything wasn't apps on your phone. Now, a lot of your younger borrowers, everything they're sending is on their phone, a screenshot from their phone, which lots of times not necessarily usable. But our industry has to evolve somehow to meet the customers where they are, right? It's some people, they almost never crack open their laptop at all. Everything is on their phone, right? So I think we have to get ways to accommodate those kinds of customers, because banking is one of the slowest moving industries there is, right? They were the last to get to the cloud. They're still using fax machines. Kids have no idea what a fax machine is,
Yeah, it's true. It's like a CD or a DVD, right?
Right.
So let me ask you this then. When you come into work, and that's great for young people getting into the business, and something even I can take something away from, I agree. Don't fight technology in any sort of way. Just try to embrace it and get stronger with it. It always reminds me, this past April, I was with a couple of people celebrating around Passover time. So my son, who's 14, had his dad and I are roughly around, he's a little older than me. I'm 47, he's 52. We were hanging out, and he owns a huge commercial recycling company out of New Jersey. And when I'm there, there was we were all hanging out, and then there was this comedy show we were all going to, and we're sitting around waiting for them to open the doors. And he goes, Michael, I want you to meet my mom. And I meet his mom, and I talked to her for maybe 5-10 minutes. And she's by far one of the sharpest people I've ever met. So afterwards, I turned to him, and I was like, by the way, my mom, talking about my own mother, she's about 83, and she just got used to the iPad. He's like, my mom is 79, and she still runs the company. And I was like, what? How did she adapt to all that change? And to your point, he made a great point. He said, my mom survived, his mother had survived the Holocaust,
Oh,
came to America as a very young kid, and was just ready to adapt to anything and everything. He says his mother, every time something new comes out about AI or soft or whatever, she's like, teach me more. And she was there, and I physically watched her like banging out emails at 79, like, because she was waiting. And I was like, I was really impressed by someone who's probably seen multiple different lifestyles and life tracks in her life, to see someone that would adapt that much. And I hope that you, myself, all of us can take that on to like adapt. To your point, like people are moving along to cell phone, text, PDFs, or whatever. Like we have to adapt a little bit to the younger generation. So to that point, like when you come into work every day, right?
oh,
Really
I don't
just
know if
getting
it's
into
the
the
it's
of
it's
it.
the math. What is it I love? Sometimes it's great to get appreciation, gratitude from customers when, at the end, that is a nice thing, and then you hear more about them. And a lot of our people, we kind of keep in contact, not entirely just for business. There's a bunch of them who are socially, because we don't necessarily do much marketing. We have it's through um, word of mouth, recommendations, real estate agents, who many of whom are our friends, and then builders and these kinds of people. So we see people socially, and we can see, and if we help them, that's I guess the payout. I mean, the
Beautiful.
emails and the clicking on this and that and stuff like that. It's hard to say that's all that fulfilling.
Right, but the human interaction is pretty enjoyable, especially when you see people get into their first home, and then when they call you to refinance 2 years later and they find out their home is worth X amount more, and they're so glad that they took that leap into home ownership, because sometimes it's a little scary,
And
right?
you do find some
Um,
great stories. Like, why is this person moving? Why are they having to do this? We've had a few generations consolidating. Oh, my mom's going to come live with us, or my kids are going to come live with us, or we need a different house. Those kinds. And you get stories. There are always stories about how they got into these situations and things like that. That's kind of fascinating to me. I like hearing those kinds of stories about
any
what in
particular
their lives
story,
brought them here.
yeah, any story that comes to mind that you can share with us of someone that you helped, that was like really rewarding because of their complex situation, and you were able to obviously put that puzzle together, right? But it was really rewarding for you at the end for some reason.
Maybe it was more rewarding because I didn't have that much hope that we were going to finish it. But if you remember, the first deal we ever did was one of the hardest I've ever done. It had already been rejected from another lender. Somehow we had met you, and this was a guy who, I think philosophically, he did not like credit, so he did not have a credit score. He was, older, and he never had I guess he never had a credit card, all this stuff. He did not have a credit score. But you want to buy a house, unless you've got the cash, you're having to do this. And there are ways to get somebody a loan who does not have a FICO score, but it is not easy. And personality wise, you're dealing with someone who doesn't believe in credit. So, but then finally, and this deal, actually, I seem to recall, was having to do with, it was one of those father and daughter were going to be living together. And so hopefully, that helped out their entire family situation, in addition to being one of the toughest ones of all. And then we did this with you, and we kind of thought, well, if Michael and his team can do this, this is a group we want to be associated with, because hopefully everything else, the easy stuff, is just going to be great.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Talk to me a little bit about that, about being a broker and this channel of being a broker. And obviously, we're so grateful that you're here with us. We love having you on the team. Tell me, like, what kind of, where do you see this going in the next 2 years, 5 years, the broker world? How much do you like it? Where do you think it can evolve a little bit? Tell me why you like this model, let's say, versus being at a big institutional bank or something like
Well,
that.
yeah, I mean, the entire mortgage industry has evolved this way. You don't not some people go to their banks and credit unions to get their loans, and those are actually okay. But again, your bank and credit union just has the offerings that they have to give you, as opposed to a broker who can look across a bunch of different lenders to find the best deal for your particular situation. And I think that's always a huge benefit to the customer. Yeah, having that kind of flexibility. And if you look at the the industry is evolving that way. The two giants, right? UWM and Rocket, they call them non-banks for exactly the reason that they don't do banking. They just do these loans, and they've really streamlined their operations around mortgages. So they can optimize and do things a lot more efficiently and less expensive than a big bank. So from our point of view, we get to take advantage of looking across all those things and get the best situations for our borrowers.
Yeah. No, that's so perfectly said. So as we wrap up here, I have two questions for you.
Great.
This will be a little fun, but just you mentioned earlier, which is you married into mortgage, right?
Yeah.
It's not often that you see couples that work together and stay together, right? Because sometimes that could be difficult. Nothing to do with mortgage, just generally in industries where couples work together. And there has to be a real mutual respect and a yin and yang, if you may, that of weaknesses and strengths. As your marriage has progressed over the last couple of years of you guys working together, what would you say has helped your marriage actually from you guys working together?
Right. On the mortgage side, my wife has got way more experience and knowledge. Therefore, I am pretty much take what she says. So that's lucky, because if you had two people who were more maybe on equal footing, there might be a lot more arguments. But then the other thing that certainly relates to our working on mortgages, but also just in general, is communication. And I've made the joke a few times, we're married, therefore our communication is imperfect. And so that definitely comes into play with the work and then outside of it. So, people go, oh, you guys should know everything. Both of you should have exactly the same knowledge about all the facts of all the stuff that's going on. Well, no, not even remotely.
Right?
Yeah.
And it must be interesting socially for you guys as well, because all your friends, whether as a couple or individually, now know you guys really as a unit, right?
Right. And it generally, one of the two of us will have more of a relationship with each borrower, right? So
Right.
that for sure. But yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought about it. I thought about it that way because I've always seen her as the mortgage person. And
Right.
I guess you're right. I guess they will see us that way.
I love it. Well, thank you for today. This has been really enjoyable, just getting to hang out with you, getting to know you a little better, and seeing, your path and your journey. I'm excited to see where it goes from here. Last question for you. How can people connect to you or follow you? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you? Well, this was awesome. Thank you for joining me on the Most Mindset. This was great today. And looking forward to working with you for many more years to come, obviously, and just being in each other's lives. So I really appreciate you today. Glad that we were able to do this.
Thank you very much, Michael. I enjoyed it. I didn't know what to expect, really. And we feel the same way about you. Having you in our lives is definitely for the better.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you.
Okay.